This conference will now be recorded.
All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and get started. It's 10 a.m. My name is Shania Gordon. I'm on the safety committee for CABAA, and we're super excited to get started back with the webinars for 2023, and even more excited and honored to have Bob Rufli here with us today. So the meeting will be recorded. Just let everybody know, and anybody who's registered, we'll try to get you sent out a link for the recording afterwards to be shared with flight departments, or just to review later on. To give a little bit of an introduction about Bob, he's the Director of Operations for the Air Charter Safety Foundation. He formerly served as Chairman of the Board of Governors, as well as was on the Executive Committee. Bob's responsible for maintaining the ACSF SMS Toolkit and for supporting the ACSF's program, including Industry Audit Standard, Aviation Safety Action Program, as well as flight data monitoring. In the operation role, he also assisted in overall process improvement, as well as overseeing the ACSF's nonprofit operation. So as you can all see, great background here with Bob. And we're super excited to have him as our first webinar presenter for all things SMS. I do ask at the end, we're going to do a Q&A. There is a chat box function on GoToMeeting. So throughout the meeting, at any point, if you have a question, please enter it in there, and I will ask all of the questions at the end to be answered by Bob. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Bob.
All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the introduction. I've been a pilot most of my career, over 40 some years. Been very fortunate to be involved in management also as I've gone through. While I'm working with the foundation right now, again, I have a strong background in aviation for many years. So let me start sharing my screen and we'll jump right in. And just a second from the beginning. I assume everybody's got my screen now
Looks good.
and not my notes. Sometimes my notes show up and they shouldn't. So, all right. Again, really appreciate the opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about what the Air Charter Safety Foundation considers best practices in safety management. One of the things that safety management in the business aviation community that we as the foundation recognize is that we've learned it from the 121 operators, and we're different. Business aviation is different, so we're trying to put a little bit of a different spin on safety management to hopefully help people understand it better and implement it. So just real quick, ACSF is a nonprofit organization. We started in 2006 and originally stood up by the NATA organization, NATA. And we're just here to enhance safety and do things all safety in the industry. So we're here to help. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime you have any questions or just want to talk safety. So the foundation recently, a few years back, kind of adopted a motto or a slogan, if you will, that Robert Sumwalt, former NTSB chair, made. He said, "It's not that you have an SMS; it's really about what do you do with an SMS." So today we're going to talk a lot about the what do you do with SMS. And again, we just really felt that this was a great quote that he made many years ago. And it really helps us understand SMS when we focus in on what is it you can do in SMS. So before we get into the best practices, I just wanted to talk a little bit about two basic elements, really, is all SMS breaks down to. And that is culture, right? We all know that culture has something to do with how we handle and interact. It's really about the people, right? How people understand it, um, support it, and focus on it is really what your culture is all about. And then it's really just a system, a process, a set of processes and procedures to do something with the information. So when you really break it down, it's just those two elements. So we're going to talk today about three best practices and actually have a little extra comment for you at the end that what I like to call is the secret best kept secret. I'm sorry about SMS. But anyway, these are practices you and your company could look at and consider. So, as we talked about culture, and culture really depends on you as an individual. It's really that simple. Um, we we talk a lot about just culture, and just culture is really nothing more. Oops, sorry. Somehow this got going on a timing thing. It's really about understanding whether you're blaming someone for things that happen or are you sharing that information. So culture is really about being open and honest about things that happen. And rather than pointing the finger and blaming people, it really should be more about sharing information. So how do we all get to an attitude or an approach as a company about sharing that information? Well, we really feel that the number one best practice for any SMS program starts with you being a professional. You know, we all call ourselves professional pilots, and that term I think is often misstepped or misunderstood, or maybe better said, taken for granted a little bit too much. And at the foundation, we like to say, does a professional really make mistakes? Mistakes is another word we as humans tend to use a lot. And the foundation, we really believe that as a professional, you don't make mistakes. You make decisions, and you make those decisions based on a few basic elements. Your experience, have you been there? Have you seen this kind of thing happen before? So we've all been there where something happened, and we kind of asked ourselves, "Whoa, wait a minute, we're not going to let that happen again." So our experiences teach us things. So we're not making mistakes. We're just making better decisions as our experience grows. Our training, look, we all know training is important, right? That's why we go to the simulator to train and to practice so that we have the experience and the training to deal with the decisions that we have to make. The information we have available to us at any given time that we have to make that decision. So we're not, you know, pilots especially, you understand that, we're at 40,000 feet and you have to make a decision in a certain amount of time. That doesn't mean it was a mistake. It was a decision you made with the information presented to you in that cockpit. Maybe there's more information that would have helped you make a better decision, but at that point in time, that's all you had. And time is the other factor. So these factors all come into play when you're making a decision. So you make a decision, and as pilots, we're all taught sometimes you can't go back and remake that decision. So it's not a mistake. It's just a decision that you made. So at the foundation, we simply like to call those decisions unexpected outcomes. As a professional, you don't plan to make a mistake. You don't plan to bust an altitude. You don't plan to do those things. So you plan for a perfect trip. You hope that everything goes well. So these are just unexpected outcomes. So if we begin to take that approach, that it's an unexpected outcome, it's not really a mistake that anybody made. Now we can lessons learned. And as I said, I think we all do this. We've all been in a situation where you've said, "Whoa, that was unexpected. I didn't expect that to happen. I need to go back and figure out why that happened and make sure it doesn't happen to me again. We all do that. We all do that as individuals, even in our daily lives. I think we do that. But certainly as professionals, we should want to share that information. We should be willing to say, gosh, I didn't expect that to happen. Maybe I should share it with the rest of my team. So we really stress be a professional and just simply report your unexpected outcomes to your company so that the company and people can do something with that information. If we don't know about it, we can't do anything to avoid the unexpected outcomes. All that does is make a safer work environment for all of us. And remember, our environment is more than just our airplane flying through the air or our maintenance shop on the floor. It involves the whole aviation system, right? The air traffic control system, other people flying through it. So you're by reporting your unexpected outcomes, you're building a safer work environment for everyone involved. Um, so culture, you can actually, it starts with you and you can be what we call a force multiplier, right? If you start sharing that information, you will help your team make better decisions. So we do this in training, right? We teach students how to make decisions, how to make smart decisions. But if we start sharing those unexpected outcomes with each other, we're just an extension of a professional wanting to learn and improve what he does every day. So be a force multiplier. It starts with yourself. It starts with every individual having that approach and attitude about doing the uh, sharing. So the next best practice that we're going to talk about is ASAP. And it kind of all folds together as you see these three best practices that I'm going to talk about. They all kind of fit in that same realm of what safety management is all about, and that is understanding unexpected outcomes and doing something about them. So the ASAP program is an FAA sponsored program. This is a program the FAA actually stood up and made available and to the industry. So we're going to talk a little bit about what ASAP is and why it's important to be a part of it. So ASAP is a confidential, it's not unanimous, um, I'm sorry, it's not, it's confidential. I'm missing the word, but anyway, meaning it's voluntary. If you report the event and it provides what's called a near consequence-free environment, we'll talk about that a little bit, but basically the FAA is saying, hey, if you tell us about your unexpected events and one of them happened to be a violation of regulation, we're going to provide you a consequence-free environment, meaning there's no consequences. So your company also makes that same statement. So it's really about, again, identifying critical incidents that occur, or as you've heard me say now, unexpected outcomes before they become an accident. Um, I assume that little box, I apologize. I've got that little box. Oh, there. Now it's out of my screen. Um, so before they become an accident, it's really, that's what it's all about. Getting those critical incidences and doing something about them. So, oh my, what else is working? So, anybody can participate, any aircraft operator. So this is a program the FAA makes available to 121s, 135s, and 91. So anyone that operates an airplane, 91 involves even small airplanes. Most of the large jet operators already know when they get, issued op specs, they get a certificate, a number, and identifier, and you can participate. So it doesn't require any operating certificate or anything like that. Anybody can participate, and any employee group. So this can be for pilots, mechanics, flight attendants, dispatchers, ground personnel. And the FAA has gotten so flexible with this program now. It started actually with the 121 operators, like I said before, but they've actually added the category of other now. And that really means anybody in your organization can be included in this consequence-free, meaning the FAA isn't going to come after you and the company is not going to come after you. So the way it really works, it's called a cooperative partnership. Your company and the FAA sign a legal document called an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. It's a legal document that all of you are technically a party to if you're an employee of that company, and the company elects to use that employee group in this program. So again, it's a legal document that says if you share your unexpected outcomes with us, then no matter what happened from it, if you violated a reg or anything, we're not going to go after you. The reason is we want the information. We want to know about it. So the other thing that happens with a lot of small operators, 91 operators especially, is you can bring in what's called a third party administrator. And that's really where ACSF falls. We are a third party administrator. We're not really we are we are a signator on the MOU, but it really is just to say that we're going to help administer the program. And for small operators, that becomes very helpful. So one of the things that we do as a third-party administrator is we receive the reports. We actually de-identify them. So because it's a confidential reporting system, no one, the company nor the FAA is really supposed to know who was involved. So we de-identify the report so that they just look at the issue. They just deal with the issue, not the people. Um, we maintain the database. We facilitate meetings, prepare agendas, and we track all recommended corrective actions. So the ASAP program nationwide today stands at 287 certificate holders, and that includes, oops, it says 120, it should say 121. Uh, uh, I'm sorry, it's 120 Part 91 flight departments. So actually, it's interesting that there's such a large participation on the 91 side. ASAP originally started with 121. And that number, 287, includes all the 121 operators today. So there's quite a participation on the 91 flight department level because it is providing that consequence-free scenario. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other benefits as we go. Um, ACSF actually has been one of the largest promoters of ASAP in the industry for many years now. And we have over 225 member companies that are participating in ASAP. So that's over 64% of the active ASAP programs nationwide. ACSF is the third party administrator. Now, again, what we do mostly is just that, the administrative work. But one of the other little things that we've seen happen as we've helped these operators is we can tend to drive consistency, and we have a broader database that when an event comes up and the company and the FAA are sitting there, well, we're really not sure what we should do with this. Air Charter Safety Foundation says, well, wait a minute, we saw that just yesterday in another meeting on the East Coast, and they handled it this way. And so we tend to drive consistency in the FAA and the industry, if you will, on how these events get handled. Because it is an interesting process. So the process, to break it down, is in simplistic ways, is the employee reports that unexpected outcome. Again, not a mistake. It's just an unexpected outcome. I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't expect to bust altitude. Nobody plans on busting an altitude. It happens. We just want to understand it did happen and why. Because candidly, there's a lot more involved than just you in the system. And I think that's the other piece that I want to really bring highlight to, is that we tend to focus on the things we do and forget about how there's so much interaction with other parts of the industry. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But once the report is made, then what's called an event review committee, it's commonly referred to, like everything in aviation with acronyms, ERC, has to actually accept the report. It reviews the report and accepts the report. I guess that I said reports and accepts reports. It's review. Um, so we'll get into why it has to be accepted in just a minute, but basically they accept it in. And then they have to unanimously determine what the root cause and corrective actions are. This is not a democratic system. It's a unanimous. Everyone has to agree. And if everybody doesn't agree, the process just continues until more information is determined, points can be made, and everyone can be unanimous. And everybody kind of goes, "Oh, wait a minute, we got the FAA in the room. How is this going to work?" And candidly, you'd be surprised how really the FAA has got a great attitude today about wanting to improve safety and how these programs ultimately do that. So the understanding is there. So it's pretty candidly, I don't think we've ever had a situation where we've never come to a unanimous decision. Um, so the reporting process itself, again, the employee makes the report. It should be an obvious safety problem. Again, it can be a violation or potential violation of regulations or company standard operating procedures. So we want to know, this is what this program is all about. It's about reporting things that happen, and really any incident related to safety of flight. That's what the FAA says that they want you to report. So they're openly saying, please tell us if you think you violated regs, and we're gonna consequence free. We're not gonna come after you. We just want to know about the issue. And the company, remember, signs that document also. So the company is making that statement that they will not go after you. So excluded reports, as I mentioned, it does have to be accepted. Well, they are going to exclude a few things. We call them the big five. Criminal activity. If there was actual criminal activity involved, then the report gets rejected. Uh, Substance abuse, if it's determined that there was substance abuse involved, then it's going to get handled differently. The use of controlled substance, if you were, actually found that you were under the use of controlled substance, that would be excluded. Certainly the use of alcohol and intentional falsification or disregard for safety. So basically, the event review committee doesn't know who, again, they look at the situation, but if they determine if they ask, and start learning that, wait a minute, sounds like this may have happened, or we learned about this, then these things would come back. But the reality is that does not happen very often. We've only excluded a very small part. I think I have a slide on that here in a minute. But so the ERC representatives, as I mentioned, it's three people, and that's why it still takes unanimous. It's a company manager. They want someone there that's willing or has the authority the way the MOU reads is that you have the authority to spend money on behalf of the company. The last thing they don't want is somebody saying, well, I got to get approval from the company to go, retrain this or create a new training program, let's say, might be something that comes out of it. An employee representative, and of course the FAA inspectors. And again, all decisions must be unanimous. The third party ASAP manager is just there as a facilitator. As I said, we're there because we have experience in dealing with these meetings and these issues, and we also have that background of knowledge of all those. We sit in at ACSF, we conduct over 30 event review committee meetings a month. So we get a lot of experience on what's going on out there. The other thing to point out is that anything that might come out of an ASAP report, corrective actions, and sometimes it does. This pilot just needs to go back for retraining on something or whatever it is. Those are not reported as part of the pilot record database. So they are excluded from your PREA reports. So again, the FAA is acknowledging that this is about safety. It's not about you. So all of that information is withheld from your PREA if the corrective action was for you individually. We don't find that. We find typically it's the company adds training or does something more broad than an individual. But if it is determined that the individual just totally misunderstood, maybe has to have retraining on something. So there's a couple of types of reports that the FAA calls these things, and then the first one is sole source report, and that's information about the event that is as a result of an ASAP report. So we get one ASAP report from a pilot, and that's it. There's no other things. And I like to talk here about unwritten ground rules. It's an interesting term. I saw a presentation about a year ago from a safety gentleman, actually out of Australia, that talked a lot about unwritten ground rules. And unwritten ground rules are simply things that you do by nature, but they're not really written down. You maybe decided that, okay, every time this happens, the co-pilot should do this. So you guys agree, and it's a small flight department, two or three pilots talk about it. You all agree, that's what we're going to do. Well, these are the kind of things that creep in and cause not they may be avoiding unexpected consequences. They may be already a root cause or a fix, but we need to know about those. So actually, 93% of the reports that we processed in 2021 were sole source. And all that means is that no one would have known about that event unless the pilots or the individual, sometimes it is mechanics, it's mostly pilots, but talk and actually report it. So a non-sole source report is like a brasher warning, or when the ATC says, oh, when you land, call this number, right? Well, the nice thing about ASAP is when you get those, you say, no problem, sir, I'll call you. And when you get on the ground, you call them and say, I'm part of an ASAP program. I will be filing an ASAP report, and they'll simply say, "Oh, great, thank you," and they'll hang up. They know ATC is very involved in ASAP, and candidly, it's probably our largest issues right now are communication errors, altitude busts, and we'll talk a little bit more about um, how some of that really can help and plays into the situation here. So again, pilot deviation reports, anything like that, those are non-sole source reports, but they still fall in. You're immediately protected if a control tower says they want to file a pilot deviation report on you. If you file an ASAP report, there nothing will come of that. So sharing the data with industry, ASAP programs are your programs. They're your company, your information. So you can do as you wish. You can make your corrective actions. You can do everything you want within your company, and that's it. But the FAA also provides a system called the Aviation Safety Information and Analysis Sharing. ACIAS, we call it. It's a program or a database really that is managed by a company called MITRE. And it's just a national database of information of ASAP reports, of ATC. ATC has an ASAP, similar program with ASAP. There's all kinds of data that the FAA is now putting together. Of course, in this new digital age, we've all learned that data can tell us some pretty interesting stories. And, it identifies hazards and comes up with corrective actions. The examples I'd love to give here are really, really interesting. We've seen some amazing things with companies that start sharing their data with ASIAS and what ASIAS is doing. ASIAS is doing great things. They're seeing, common altitude busts. All of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, why are we having all these altitude busts? Well, at this intersection, and they'll go back and they'll look at it and they'll realize that maybe there's some things that aren't, the controllers aren't doing certain things at the right time. So they'll change different requirements within the system. So we've seen a lot of examples of that just coming out of the ASIAS program. They're doing some really great things. They in their database, you can now say, "Oh, I'm about to fly to LA. Geez, I've never gone into LA in my whole career." You can go onto the ASIAS database. You can see the hot spots where they are experiencing altitude busts or speed deviations or different things. That's the other one. Speed problems, right, are common, right? You get slammed down and all this you're going too fast or whatever. So all of those things. So you can begin to see kind of those hot spots for where those things are happening to others. So again, it's about sharing information and learning from each other. It's really that simple. So um, final thoughts on ASAP. It really does fix safety problems. Again, I can't tell you. One of the other examples that we had with, well, two, I guess, that I'd like to take a minute and just give you an example of what happens. So one was a handoff between two centers. The altitude was wrong. The pilot couldn't, he wasn't sure what the heck happened. So he just filed an ASAP report. And to keep the story short, we through the ASAP report, and that was the only one. The ATC didn't even file a report or anything on him. They just blew it off. Well, we found out that the system that one of the centers was using had broken down for getting new information, new agreements. You know how these centers have agreements that, okay, at this intersection, you're going to hand off this kind of traffic at this altitude and this speed. Well, that information did not get to that controller. We figured out that ultimately ATC's process and procedures for moving that information to the appropriate people had broke down. Unwritten ground rules had creeped in. So they fixed it and everybody went on. So there's an example of a fix that, again, wasn't the pilot's fault. It was an unexpected outcome. He reported it and the whole system improved because of it. Another amazing one was we had a company that really wanted to figure this out and they dug in and it ended up being an FMS programming issue. we got back to the FMS manufacturer and they went, oh, we didn't know it did that. Why did it do that? And they went back into their programming and realized, oh, wow, we've got a problem with the way our logic is programmed into this box. So again, not a fault of he like, wait a minute, why did that fix disappear or what? I forget exactly the details, but again, the pilots were confused. They had an unexpected outcome between their interaction with the box. And we're seeing this a lot. These boxes are with all the changes that are happening. So these FMS databases aren't always perfect. So by reporting that, we actually made a fix to the FMS, which ultimately rolled out and fixed hundreds of airplanes from having that same problem. So again, sharing that data. Um, ASAP, of course, again, enforcement related incentives. The FAA created this as an incentive for you to participate because they see the value in the data. And again, proven history, and we all win. This is just a great, great program. Air Charter Safety Foundation, excuse me, believes so much in the power of ASAP that we've got some SMS tools and things that we just give away for free, but you got to participate in ASAP. We just highly encourage everyone to get involved in ASAP. It's a great program that the FAA created. It's data driven and it has a great impact. Let me keep going here. So when in doubt, fill it out. That's my, motto. I try to always remind people. If you even think about, should I fill it? Yes, you should. Doesn't matter. Report it. Somebody might find a little nugget in that information and come up with a fix. Okay. So the third and final best practice we're going to talk about today is flight data monitoring. And this kind of goes along again with the same theme. So we're going to talk real quickly about what is flight data monitoring, how does it work, why do we do it, and some of the barriers. Candidly, there are some barriers, and there's some confusion around this acronym right now, I think. And it involves FOQA. Everybody goes, oh yeah, I've got a FOQA program, or is that a FOQA program? Well, the reality is it's not quite the same. Every FOQA program is a flight data monitoring program, but not every flight data monitoring program is a FOQA program. FOQA is an official FAA program. We in our industry have started to blur this line, and I think it's important because the minute somebody says, I'm going to go get a FOQA program, whoa, the task list, what the heck happened? That's the task list just gets um, large because now you're dealing with the FAA, you've got official programs and all kinds of stuff. And candidly, you just don't need that. A flight data monitoring program that can make an impact in your system can still be um, part of your program. It is important to note that the FAA does not recognize FOQA as a non-punitive, but if your company takes the right approach, it's really not a problem if everybody has that right culture. And all it is analyzing flight data, looking for undesired trends. So flight data monitoring tells us what the aircraft did in flight. So we know how fast it was going, where it was going, what it was doing. ASAP tells us the why. The pilot needs to tell us, well, why did it do that? Because I programmed the FMS or the autopilot just took over and did this. And I flew an Airbus 319, and one of the most common things we learned at school was most Airbus pilots go, what the heck is it doing now? Because it was early automation, and the airplane really tries to think for itself. So anyway, we really need to know that, what and the why. And those two pieces make a great tool for improving safety. So how does it work? It's really a bunch of sensors and cameras and or cameras. Helicopter world uses cameras a lot that measure everything about the aircraft, the realm of flight, the configuration, the system's parameters. But I want to stop here and say it doesn't have to do all of that. It can do parts of that. And it's amazing what's out there now, technology wise. When you look at some of the things, I was totally impressed with Embry-Riddle. Embry-Riddle now has these, I apologize, this thing's on a timing. Embry-Riddle actually has these apps now that their pilots use to review their training session. So they actually land and they grab their iPad and they see a little picture of how they did that Chandelle or Lazy Eight. And it's just amazing, the technology that's there. So it doesn't have to do everything, but if it does some part of it, it can be considered a flight data monitoring program. The other one of the barriers or challenges is now we need a software that turns that data into understandable information. There's tons and tons of data, and candidly, the big corporate airplanes have had this data for many years. The manufacturers started putting it on there, the sensors that could tell where the flap positions were, and what your throttle settings were, and all those kind of things. Of course, with automation, that's needed now. So the sensors are there in a lot of airplanes. It's just really getting that data and putting it into understandable information related to the flight. So why we do it? Well, it obviously has an improvement to safety. It is measurable. It can measure your ability to be compliant. It is a great input to your SMS and your ASAP program. Um, it does implement corrective actions as needed. There's a ton. The example here is ASIS data, as I mentioned, sees a lot of altitude bust. The other one, not altitude bust, the other one that's real big is TCAS. Oh, this thing, I got so apologize. Must be on a timer thing. But anyway, one of the things ASIS does is they see a lot of TCAS information coming off of these flight data monitoring programs, and they're seeing them at certain intersections, and they're doing investigations. I'm part of a committee that we actually look at the data and go, wow, look at all these TCASs here on the Peterborough 6 departure, right? Everybody's familiar with that one. Um, so, why is that happening? And we go back to ATC and we figure that out, and they change some routings or they change altitudes, or it's just phenomenal what we're doing now with the data. And of course, all this has been recommended by the NTSB for years. So the perceived barriers is money. Everybody goes, well, they talk about a corporate airplane and all those sensors, and used to be, yeah, you could get charged, well, and you still can, like hundreds of thousands of dollars to equip your aircraft with all these sensors. But there are simple solutions out there nowadays. Candidly, your phone can do an awful lot. It's really surprising. So we've spent a lot of time at the foundation trying to understand what's out there and how to really bring those costs down, and the time to implement. The time to implement is not as much as you think anymore. Um, and again, it catches those unexpected decisions, right? Those decisions should have been outcomes. I'm sorry. Um, and again, the data um, could be used against you is a perceived barrier. Everybody likes to say, well, wait a minute, I don't want them to know I was low and slow, or I missed that crossing or whatever. Well, again, it's about sharing those unexpected outcomes. So what does it take for an FDM? It's going to take just culture. It's going to take that attitude by your company. and you to share the data and be a part of it and improve your safety culture. Um, just a few closing thoughts on SMS. SMS is data. It's data driven. It's all about getting the data. You've heard me say that many times now, and you've heard, the results of getting that data and how we can mitigate the risks involved in your day. So these things are happening all around you just because you may not be participating. The ASAP reports we're getting from other pilots are affecting your day and your life. So SMS is all about data. Let's not make it about, pointing fingers again at mistakes or what I like to say, unexpected outcomes. So get involved, be a part of it. The system is the system. It's a procedures and processes and doing the reports. Doesn't have to be comprehensive. This is where we really get caught up. The 121s come in and said, oh, this is how the system should work. And here's, you need all these things and you need, you know, um, risk profiles and just a ton of stuff. Well, they're big operators. They can do that, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't mean comprehensive, doesn't mean complex. So keep it simple. We really are big on keep it simple. If you want ideas on how to keep it simple, we've got ideas for you. It's really just identifying those issues, getting those reports, talking about it, what can we do about it, and coming up with fixes. That's all SMS is. It doesn't have to be this complex system of reportings and records and it can fit into that. It really can. So in the end, just do something. Don't sit there and talk about it. Look at things on a case by case basis. It's okay to say, you know what, we're just not going to talk about that one today. We just don't see a lot of value in it. We're just going to move on. 121 is going to tell you, well, you've got to process every report. You got to do a risk analysis. You've got to do a root cause. You got to come up with a corrective action. You've got to do an effectiveness review. It's just not practical in the small world. We just don't have the staff and the people in these small operators to do that. So we'll help you with that, getting comfortable with doing that. And keep it simple and easy. It doesn't need to be complex. Complex and comprehensive are not the same things. So start with your culture. It's about you. Be a part of the system. Get involved. Um, and walk before you run. Don't get out there and try to tackle a huge SMS program all at once. Just get the reporting going. Get comfortable with seeing what's going on out there. Don't feel like you've got to accomplish everything at first. The whole process. And so we really encourage that walk before you run with SMS. Otherwise, you run straight into the weeds and you'll get lost. It's just it's so easy to do. So one last thing. Appreciate everybody's time. One last best practice, and I mentioned this at the beginning. What I like to say, the best kept secret about SMS is it's not about safety. Uh, This system can be the best management system you will ever implement in your company. It can be used for everything. And the FAA just recently recognized that. They actually made a statement in their notice of proposed rulemaking. I'm sure most of you have heard that, SMS is coming to 135. It's going to be required for 135 operators. So they made the statement in their notice of proposed rule. It's okay to use other departments. Use your customer. This is the best customer service improvement tool you will ever implement. A couple of companies that I've worked for now, we said we're taking the S out of this thing and we're just going to use it for management. So tell me when you don't understand a form. Tell me you don't understand why you're doing something. not just, ahead of my dispatchers and everybody. Just start putting in, we call them SMS reports, but on anything. It doesn't have to be safety. Why was that catering, so screwed up? Well, because the dispatcher didn't have time to do the order. You'd be surprised when you dig into issues how you will find the root causes and corrective actions that are simple and easy fixes. Oh, well, maybe she just, or he, whoever that's taking that order, didn't have a pad and pencil by their phone. Something that simple sometimes you'd be surprised what you will run into. So it's not always about safety. It's a great, great management system process once you get it all working. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate everyone listening in. We got a few minutes. Let's open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob. We really appreciate it again. Just a reminder, if you guys do have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We've had a couple so far, so I'll go ahead and start reading them off for some answers here. The first one is, my department's very small. Can you say that it's really necessary for an SMS?
Absolutely. Again, you'd be surprised what you can do and what you will learn if you just take the approach of reporting the unexpected outcomes. I challenge every one of you to ask yourself, if you went through the day without anything unexpected happening, I'd be shocked, right? So take that unexpected outcome and simply ask yourself, why did it happen? And is there something I can do to ensure it didn't? Why did we as two pilots miss that crossing restriction? Sometimes it's not, again, it's not your fault. It's ATC's fault that you missed that crossing restriction. Tell us about it. The more data we have on missing crossing restrictions, ATC is going to fix the problem. So absolutely be a part of the bigger solution. Don't just focus on your company.
Definitely. Another one is, are NASA reports an element of the ASAP program?
That's a great question. I should have addressed that. No, they are not. They're two different databases. We encourage pilots to go ahead and put in NASA reports. NASA was an older version. It's an older database tool that the FAA originally started with. ASAP is kind of what I like to say is the NASA on 2.0. It's kind of the new version, and it is an official document. One of the challenges with the NASA is the data isn't as detailed, where in ASAP you will get more data. So if you file an ASAP, there's really no need to file a NASA report. Um, but it's just putting it into a second database. Nowadays they're finally at that ASIS level, that data is getting integrated. So they're part of the same database.
Okay, that's great. There were a couple questions that were along the same lines, but a big um, question is, how do you get 100% buy-in within your company to the SMS program, and also getting over that, oh, big brother watching mentality of FOQA? How do you get everyone on board?
Yeah, again, that's culture, right? And that's what it's all about. If you can't build that culture, so it takes everyone in the organization. That's why one of the key elements to SMS that the FAA focuses on is upper management. I got a buy-in, right? Is upper management willing to say, look, if you tell me about those unexpected outcomes, I'm not going to penalize you. So that's where ASAP really helps, right? It makes everybody feel a little bit more comfortable, that no one's going to come after. They have a legal document in their hand that protects them. So it definitely is challenging. And like any culture, it's always about talking about it and sharing and informing each other and making each other comfortable that this is the right thing to do. We're helping each other. So So let's get in there. And candidly, I think nowadays this has become so much more ingrained in our industry that you really, if you have a company that's fighting that hard, or if you have individuals that hard, I really question, are you a professional? Back to that whole professional, what I started the presentation with is we as human beings should be very understanding that we are not perfect. We try, but we have unexpected outcomes. We don't make mistakes. We just have an unexpected outcome. I didn't intend that to happen. So share it. That's not Big Brother watching. That's being honest. So yeah.
No, that's great. Definitely starting at the top. Another great question here. Have you ever used NGAFID for corporate aviation departments, and would you recommend it? This person
I'm
said you have
sorry.
pre-built reports you can run after uploading your raw FDM data.
Oh, no, I have not. So the FDM piece, the foundation hasn't been dealing with too long. We're just trying to get more and more involved. And candidly, there is so much out there around that whole FOQA flight data monitoring softwares and systems out there. It's a very complex process. So there's, depending on the aircraft you have, the equipment that you have, then does it work with that software you have? Those three pieces really play a big part in how you're going to develop your flight data monitoring. But there are other options out there that are a lot cheaper nowadays and simpler. So no, I haven't, not very familiar with that. But certainly, if it's a system like it sounds like that does a lot of it, it takes the data and immediately turns it into a nice presentation of here's what happened. Wow, that's great. Those are the kind of things you're looking for.
Okay. Another question, is a professional airmanship development plan a part of SMS?
It certainly should be. One of the things we're working on right now with the FAA is the WINGS program. I don't know how many people are aware of the FAA WINGS program, but what that really is a whole bunch of webinars and classes and lessons and things that you can go online and take, and you earn points to kind of say, yeah, I am a professional pilot. I am retraining myself. I'm trying to do these things. And the insurance industry, tap, tap, tap on my friend over there. I see his picture, Mr. Johns. Hopefully we'll pay attention to those kind of things and really recognize that, there's value in people that are willing to try to be a professional pilot. So absolutely, SMS. The more, I think, if you as a company promote those kind of things, you're telling your employees that, yes, we want you to be a professional. We expect you to, it's professional, it's constant learning, right? You never stop. You should never stop learning. So, absolutely, professional development programs are great. The WINGS program is a really good one. We're actually working with the FAA trying to encourage them to actually acknowledge it in SMS programs today. So hopefully more on that to come.
That's great. Another question here, which I think applies to a lot of people, is I want to get started, but it seems very overwhelming. What do you recommend as the first few steps?
Yeah, absolutely. It is overwhelming, no doubt about it. A lot of people say you get caught up in the weeds. I like to say you get caught up in the roots. It's the root cause, right? You can dig into that. So that's that walk before you run approach that I had in the beginning. So honestly, it's about getting the report, talking about it, and doing something about it. Don't get caught up in the system of how you do that, right? I talked about the system and how we've learned the system from the 121s. Don't get caught up in that in early stages. Just simply, when you're done, if you're a small flight department, when you're done, do a debrief, right? We do training debriefs all the time. Do a flight debrief. What was the unexpected outcomes we had during that flight? Write them down. Go sit at the coffee shop, Starbucks, wherever, donut shop, and talk about why do we think we had those? Well, wait a minute, this happened or that happened. Well, is there anything we can do about that? Maybe not. Maybe there is. So it's that professional attitude about acknowledging that you're going to have unexpected outcomes, trying to understand why you had them after the fact. You're not going to have the time to deal with them. You do your job when you deal with it at that time. But go back and ask yourself, why did that happen? And what can I do about it? That's SMS. Get used to that process, then start officially documenting it, then start officially looking at pie charts and graphs and doing the root causes and the risk assessments. But the whole risk assessment piece to me is very critical, um, but it's a perception. Risk is different for you than it is for the next guy. So risk is really a challenging. We focus in on, well, you got to do your risk assessment so that you can prioritize those things. Well, don't worry about prioritizing. Just deal with them. And if you deal with them, you'll get used to how the system works. And then you worry about how you document it and how you've got your manuals and all of that. Get your culture established. Let your people know you're trying. Don't get too far out in front of yourself.
All right, I think the last question here is kind of going back to that, getting a buy-in. You talked about upper management being the most important part. If you are lower level with an upper management that's not really pushing SMS, what are some things you can bring to your management to encourage this kind of environment in that work atmosphere?
Well, that was the secret sauce that I talked about at the very end. It's the best management system you will ever implement. So I would argue if you go to upper management, and we're here to help ACSF, and I've got great examples of how I've implemented it in other situations and mergers and acquisitions and all kinds of things. Um, your upper management should grasp that it ultimately is a cost saving, efficiency driving machine. It literally will do that for you in every aspect of your business. It is a cost effective, efficiency driving machine. And if you need help with explaining that to them, please let me know. If they ultimately don't get it, probably should go look for somewhere else to work because your workplace is not going to be safe. I can say that, I guess.
No, that's great though. We love that you're available as a resource to our members and for future to gather information to bring to their companies, and that's fantastic. I think that's all we have for questions today. Again, we really appreciate you being here. Just a reminder to all of our members that it will be recorded, or this meeting was recorded, and I will be sending it out to everyone registered. And also, we will be having another webinar in July. It's going to be focused on mental health in aviation, as well as just overall health and looking out for each other in our flight departments. So more information on that to come. But Bob, we were so fortunate to have you join us today, and thank you for everyone who was here.
My pleasure again. Always great. Enjoy, everybody. Have a great day.